And before we get to the main video, make sure in the comments you'll see a link to an ebook download of opinion pieces, columns that I've written since October 7th, really chronicling the different stages of the war and my analysis throughout since it started. So if you've been enjoying these videos, you've been enjoying this channel, please share and subscribe, but make sure to download the ebook in the comments below. Everyone's freaking out about the United States aggressively attacking the Houthis in Yemen, and there's all kinds of fears that there's going to be this expanded war that's going to include massive amounts of deaths of U.S. troops in a war against Iran. I want to explain what I believe Donald Trump's strategy is and why these aggressive attacks against the Houthis in Yemen, while they seem extremely interventionist, obviously, I mean, the United States is actually attacking the Houthis, but actually this is the correct America First policy, which will lead to more peace and less need for U.S. intervention down the road. Let me explain what I mean. Back in Trump's first term, famously, the United States took out ISIS, and that was in 2018. They destroyed ISIS after Obama said that it would be a decades-long struggle. The Trump administration aggressively wiped out ISIS in a matter of weeks. And then later on in 2020, in early 2020 or late 2019, I think it was, Qasem Soleimani was assassinated by the Americans. And shortly thereafter, the Iranians did a kind of symbolic retaliation against some empty buildings in a U.S. base. And then Donald Trump gave a speech. And his speech was directed against the Iranians. The opening line of the speech, this is a speech delivered on January 8th, 2020. The opening line of the speech was, "As long as I am president of the United States, Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon." So that was kind of the topic heading, the title, as it were, of the speech. And then the speech goes on to outline all of the dangers that Iran poses to the United States' national interests and to the world, and warning Iran against all of its nefarious activity. And mentions, of course, the killing of Qasem Soleimani. And then at the end of the speech, seemingly having nothing to do with Iran, Trump ended the speech by reminding the Iranians that he completely wiped out ISIS. And that's what I think is happening right now with the Houthis. You see, Trump has made it clear, and his people have made it clear, that they prefer some sort of negotiated resolution of the Iran issue so that Iran does not achieve a nuclear weapon that could threaten not only Israel, but the world. Because remember, if Iran has a nuclear weapons are not just big missiles. Once you have the nuclear weapon capability, you can create small nuclear weapons. You could create tactical nuclear weapons that can be transported. It means that all of Iran's terror proxies would then also have access to nuclear weapons. That's why it's such a serious global strategic threat to everybody if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. So Trump has made it very clear that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Trump also understands, as he displayed in his first term over and over again, that the only real path to peace in the Middle East, the only real path to peace with these bad actors, is a credible threat to their rule, an existential threat to them. They have to really be afraid that they are going to be removed, that they will be defeated, that they will lose power. And that's why during the previous administration, the Biden administration, and all the administrations that really came before Trump, these evil actors were kind of free to do whatever they wanted. They weren't really afraid that they were going to be taken down. And Trump came in with the doctrine that he calls peace through strength. And peace through strength doesn't just mean that you go around willy-nilly whacking your enemies. What peace through strength means, you display to your enemies that you really mean business. And that is what leads to actual deterrence. Now, words don't cut it. You actually have to do something. So in Trump's first term, by aggressively wiping out ISIS, which on the face of it seems like a very interventionist act, what he did was he set the tone that he really means business, that decisive victory is what he will drive towards if the United States gets involved in a conflict, not some drawn-out, protracted, never-ending war that really doesn't have a victory strategy. So he did that by wiping out ISIS. He then, as I just showed in that speech, used the destruction of ISIS as a predicate to point the finger at Iran and say, look, we destroyed ISIS, we took out Qasem Soleimani, we mean business, and that deterred Iran. That plus the sanctions meant that Iran was deterred from funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. They were running out of cash, but they also were very much deterred. They were on their back foot. They knew that Trump meant business. And I believe that that's exactly the same strategy that Trump is using right now. These aggressive attacks against the Houthis, aggressive enough that they're not just lobbing a few missiles. The Biden administration was also attacking the Houthis. They just weren't doing it that aggressively. The Trump administration is aggressively attacking the Houthis. And you saw right after, a day after the attacks against the Houthis began, Donald Trump put out a statement blaming the Iranians for the Houthis' nefarious behavior and telling the Iranians that he will hold them accountable for what the Houthis do. That's exactly the same strategy as Trump employed in his first term. Just replace ISIS with the Houthis, and you have the same strategy. So really what Donald Trump is doing is he is reinstating the deterrence, the peace through strength deterrence, using the same method. You wipe out the smaller, easier target to achieve a decisive victory over them. This one, the Houthis, will not involve U.S. troops on the ground, and that will serve not only to weaken Iran by taking out one of its proxies, but also let them know that he is not going to play the forever war, no victory game, that if he enters into a conflict with them, it will mean decisive victory. And that's the only type of deterrence that works in the Middle East. As we say in the Middle East, Donald Trump speaks Arabic.